Oh, good to see you again, Stephen. Really good to see you.
Thank you
It's been
so
far
much.
too long, and a lot has happened.
Yes, it
and,
has.
in the audience, welcome very, very much to Conversations. Those who view with regularity will recognize our guest, Stephen Eric Bronner, Ph.D., Distinguished Professor of Political Science at the Rutgers University, and also chair, I guess, of the institution U.S. Academics for Peace.
U.S. Academics for Peace,
And he's
that's
also a serious scholar. I was just saying to him as the camera started rolling, I don't know how he gets the time to write. His CV goes on like some sort of a scroll across the ballroom floor of all the writing he has done. And he's a major, major scholar, if I may say so. It's so good to see you again, Stephen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Share with us a little bit, quick, okay? We want to get to the Middle East, and to particularly, I think it's worth focusing on that with the things that have been going on recently. But just quickly, your own background, maybe a quick sketch.
My own background, I have been interested in politics since I was young. I studied at City College of New York, and then at Berkeley. I got my degree. I studied in Europe for a while, and I did a lot of work on Europe and on 20th century political history. And then I got interested, I was always an activist, I was always active in various political organizations, and then I wound up, especially with the Iraq War, with U.S. Academics for Peace, and we've been to various places. We've spoken with any number of leaders, political organizations, non-governmental organizations, human rights groups in Iran, in Syria. We visited with a different group, I visited the West Bank. In fact, I even had the pleasure to meet Arafat, Yasser Arafat, who I know was on your show.
Well, we're taping today, and what's the date today? 24th?
Today's the 24th.
Tomorrow in Manhattan, we're re-airing a program we had done with Yasser Arafat back in 1989 in Tunis. Yeah, as it happened.
And in Syria, we had the pleasure, Dr. James Jennings is the president of Conscience International and also works with U.S. Academics for Peace. He organized a group of us who met with President Assad, Bashir al-Assad in Syria.
Okay.
So we've been quite active and done some, and I should say, the last time I was on with you, you know, I've spent a lot of time and effort dealing with, or trying to deal with the question of Darfur.
Yeah, I know you have, and that's really a serious
And that I like to think is, we've had a certain amount of success. We've helped some people. We've come up with some ideas. And some of them have been picked up by the government, some not.
You're on the side of peace.
Yes, peace is better than war.
Yeah, peace is better than war. And also, I wonder, you know Norton Misvinsky by any chance?
No, I don't, but I'll tell you a funny story with war and peace.
Okay.
I did a book called Peace Out of Reach on the Middle East.
We spoke about it.
Yes.
On the past
and there was a review in the U.S. Air Force Journal.
Really?
And the person who did the review, this is just classic, one of the things I argued for, which has now actually become a position of the African Union and the Arab League, I've argued for different kinds of embargoes on arms.
Very important question.
Very important. And I personally, I think they should be treated like drugs. I think it's no different than that.
Okay.
There has to be an international effort, especially to keep handguns out of Africa and out of areas where there are insurgencies. But neither here nor there.
Do we have a good source on where the guns come from? Are there considerable amount of them come from the United States of America?
America is becoming more and more a gun runner.
Really?
Yeah, and with this, a lot of guns and weapons come from Israel and from Russia and from France. France is very active.
Those are the main ones that supply handguns or small arms?
Small arms.
And then when you get into things like F-16s and all that sort of thing, it's a whole other ball game, but that's part of the dialectic.
Yes, you can put it that way. And I think these are basically the countries that are at the forefront of this. But anyway, I got this review of this
in
book.
Military Magazine.
In a military magazine. And the person was very critical of the book, of course. I do have a progressive position. I like to think of myself having a progressive position. And he said, and can you imagine He thinks that getting rid of guns will improve the chances for peace.
Well, it seems to me there is a logic there, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
there is. But it's sort of. I was on one.
He's doing that just heart. Isn't that a joke? As if that would bring peace, right? Yeah. That
and
kind
so
of
I thought, well, of course, you could make the opposite argument.
Yeah.
Maybe what we should do is have more guns, and then we'll have a better chance for peace. And it's unbelievable the way people think about these things.
Right. Well, and you've done political. Have you done a good? I don't know. Every field, it seems to me, can get very specialized and so forth. But have you?
I try to be a generalist.
A generalist within political science or in general.
Yes.
Yeah, so things like
20th century thought.
20th century, so but you would be concerned with geopolitical theory, George Kennan, containment, all of that kind of thing that we applied.
I know a bit about that,
and you see the world through that kind of a prism in a way, I guess.
I like to think of myself as trying to merge democratic thinking with realism, with political realism. And in fact, there is a book coming out that's been done by my students. I was just 60 last year. And the book will be
What do you mean you were 60?
I was 60 years old.
You're only 60?
Yeah.
No wonder you're so full of vim and vigor. You're just a kid, for crying out loud.
You could have said, I don't look it, but that's... But anyway, at any rate, the book is going to be called Rational Radicalism in Political Theory.
Okay.
And it's done by my students.
Oh really?
Yeah.
At Rutgers, huh?
Many of them from Rutgers, but some from elsewhere, that talk about some of my contributions to geopolitical thinking and political theory.
Well, your writing is so voluminous. I mean, articles and books and things. I don't know how one gets time to write all that stuff. But anyway, and we're going to try and draft you to see if we can't get you into the multimedia.
I'll try.
Okay, that would be good. I think he'd be good. Don't you, everybody in the audience, think he'd be great on camera for getting these ideas out? But the thing is, going back to, that's what I was going to ask you. You were talking about peace. You talked about Iraq. But you're too young to have been actively engaged at the big thing with the Vietnam back in 69,
I was a student at City College then. And I went to demonstrations. Yeah, I went to demonstrations.
Protesting that thing, that situation?
Yeah.
And that was...
I wasn't very influential. I mean, I wasn't influential, but I participated. I went to peace meetings of various political groups and... on campus, and that's where I started to make contacts in the community.
Right. Have you been involved historically with the relationships of power between various political entities back over the historical record and so forth, or over the historical period, Rome? You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't go back that far.
The relationship of power politics within the evolution of world society.
I've tried to develop in my thinking, I did this in a book called Blood in the Sand.
Okay.
What we need is a kind of democratic realism in terms of foreign policy. In other words, we have to be realistic. We have to talk about objective reality.
Realpolitik?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay.
That's also sort of part of my educational background. But I think it has to be infused with democratic principles.
Okay.
And if you think of Vietnam, one of the reasons we speak of the Vietnam trauma is not simply because the United States lost the war.
Wait a minute, we lost the war.
We did lose the war.
What other war had we lost?
No, but
Korea was a draw, would you say, or what?
Depends how
First
you look
World
at
War.
it. Let me
the Second World War, we won overwhelmingly. We emerged as the world great power, without question, right?
But I wanted to say one of the things that's interesting and that's important with regard to democratic realism is that with Vietnam, this was the first time there were major, shall we say, uprisings, protests from below.
In our country and the world.
And it questioned the ability of the State Department and the Defense Department and the executive to unilaterally make policy.
Right.
And I think that's the trauma, as much as the loss.
Oh, yeah.
For policymakers, especially neoconservatives, if you think about it, there had been an ongoing concern to constrict the input of, shall we say, non-governmental organizations on policymaking.
Civil society.
Since the Vietnam War.
Right. Okay, that's something that's going on.
And in fact, there's just now been a bill, a decision that's been rendered by the court, and, which basically, which has basically said that any organizations or individuals that actually go into contact with groups like Hamas on the terrorist list are open to prosecution, which is almost unbelievable. Because let's say you have an academic who can go over to speak to Hamas, to actually speak to Al Qaeda.
Norton Brzezinski has. You've talked to some.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I mean, one would think that this is something you would want to encourage, unless there's an obsession with keeping power and keeping the direction of foreign policy within the group, a small little group. And one of the things you see, even with regard to the relation between the government and academia, is, and you see it in the Times, you see it in the media, it's the same people over and over and over again. Going back to the time of Vietnam, even progenies. You can think of Norman Podhoretz, John Podhoretz. You can think of Irving Kristol and Bill Kristol. You can think of Richard Pipes, who ran basically the Cold War Russian machine at Harvard, and his son Daniel Pipes, who's one of the right-wing, and who really is not on the level of his father. His father was very smart. But it's incredible. It's like this right-wing ideology and this set of experts keeps producing and reproducing itself, and it's almost like no one's looking for new blood. Especially imaginative, radical people who are on the outside.
Well, radical means going to the heart of things. It means you're going to the root of things, not just symptoms, but going to the...
No, I'm not speaking now what the political position is. I mean, you know, you think of this flotilla stuff.
It just happened with something
which is a terrible thing. There are three things to me which become obvious. One, it shows what concerted activism can do. This has been, if we think of the stalemate in over Gaza that has existed now for at least a year and a half, 2 years, and for, of course, Israel and Palestine going back far longer. Here you have the efforts of young people, good people. Were there some extremist militants on board? Yeah. So what? Even if the Israeli Navy and the Israeli troops, even if they did feel threatened, can't they shoot at the legs? I mean, I'm no military expert.
You're not.
But,
you're not a military. Did you have to do the military?
No, I didn't.
I did. It was awful.
I'm
you
sure
wouldn't
it was.
Like it, believe me.
I'm sure that's true. But going back on this, one, this is the action of courageous people outside the government has now at least opened up the corridor for the land corridor for aid to Gaza.
Okay.
Not the government.
Did they open the Rafah Gate, Egypt, or not?
They did. It's on and off.
On and off. It's still,
but the land passage is opened. The commitment has been made to open it. On and off, perhaps, however you want to look at it. The point is a change has been made. Number two, there's been an Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which has lain dormant, is now in people's minds.
It sure is.
That's why you asked me to talk about it. And I think, thirdly, it's forced people to think about, once again, what one wants to do. Because the common wisdom in Washington and among experts, and I'll tell you, the experts on the Middle East are the least expert people I have ever encountered.
Really? There's
it's
idea
just absolutely unbelievable.
An idea fixe. Fixe, or how did Freud use
well,
to say that?
well, you would say an idea fix, but
idea fix.
But this is more idea vacuum.
Okay.
There is nothing happening. And as much as I admire President Obama, and I do,
I sure want to.
In spite of Afghanistan.
I understand exactly.
His choice of foreign policy people The same thing
Rahm
over
Emanuel.
and over.
Rahm Emanuel.
Well,
Yeah,
Richard Holbrooke,
yeah.
just to use one example.
Yeah, right.
George Mitchell.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go on and on.
Right.
And this, I think, it's very unfortunate. And what these people on the Turkish convoy showed was that you can make a break without the governments. You can make a change by concerted, courageous action on the part of NGOs.
They would be seen that way as courageous. On our side, they would be seen as like
terrorists.
The enemy. They called Nelson Mandela a terrorist.
Yes, they did.
And I believe, you should know historically, we must understand our history, right? Even though we're very rooted in the present. And was it Santayana said, if you have to, don't forget history, you're doomed to repeat it.
I never really bought that.
But I believe, okay, but anyway, I believe that George III called George Washington a terrorist.
Yeah.
It's a term that's used to talk, what it does is it identifies the enemy of a political organization that sees themselves as historically legitimate.
Let me,
right? And that's an important
you raise an important question. Let me see if I can lay this out a little bit, because I think we get confused.
Yeah, because there's a lot of propaganda. We should all understand we're all submitted to it.
I'm personally someone, if I think of my heroes in politics, I think of people like Gandhi, I think of Mandela, I think of Martin Luther King. They're people who bring out the best in their clientele, if you want.
Did you like Malcolm?
I was critical of Malcolm.
Malcolm in his day was very, very controversial and very much blackballed.
But the reason I say this is the following. I personally don't believe that terror as a tactic is ultimately beneficial. Okay. Because I think the places where they were strong,
of that too,
but that's coming.
Okay.
But here's the important thing. There's a difference between terrorists like Timothy McVeigh, who has no mass base, of course, who blew up the Oklahoma security building, and groups that endorse violence, and Hamas does endorse violence, that are actually grounded in the population. Yeah. Our foreign policy apparatus was astonished when Hamas won that election.
Yeah.
President Bush.
They didn't want to. That can't be allowed. In fact, I mean.
Well, President Bush called the election, wanted the election, because he thought Hamas would win.
Now, he thought Hamas would win.
I'm sorry, he thought Fatah would win, and he thought Hamas would lose. That was my mistake. But what kind of advice is he getting? People I know, I'm the senior editor of an internet journal called Logos.
Okay. Yes, right.
Right?
Is that connected with, was it Barber? Benjamin Barber? No.
Well, Ben is an old colleague of Ben Barber, and he's written for us, or he's been interviewed for us. He's an excellent scholar. Excellent scholar.
Absolutely.
And also a really astute political mind. But anyway.
Demos, he's got.
He works with Demos now.
Right. Okay,
but in Logos, we sort of specialize in the Middle East.
Okay.
There wasn't anybody who was surprised. Everybody thought, this is obvious. What is President Bush doing? Hamas is grounded in the population. You can agree with it or you can disagree with their tactics, but they clearly have support in the Palestinian population, the population of Gaza in particular. Hezbollah is grounded in the population. And what the media does, and what the media does is try to portray these groups as just a clique. A small group of people, and that's the mistake. As soon as you realize that they're grounded, that they have a mass base, you realize you have to talk.
Well, that's why people are so nervous about their existence at all. People, let's say, on the side of Israel, they're just moving into settlement in East Jerusalem, almost building all bridges back to a two-state solution. In the minds of many people, and they're doing. Netanyahu's got the bit in his teeth. It seems very dangerous to me that you've got a Likudnik right-wing radical fringe. You've got this guy Lieberman over there.
Avigdor Lieberman.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's very dangerous, it seems to me. There's an arrogance and an apartheid mentality that's emerging that's very dangerous because they got something like 400 atomic bombs.
Yeah, but I wanted to just say, our eyes are now fixed on the flotilla and Gaza.
Yeah, at this moment.
As you know, Israel has loosened the blockade, certainly over the land, right? Just over the last week, the moratorium that Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed to on expanding Israeli settlements has come to an end.
Right.
New settlements are now, as we speak, new settlements are being built.
That's right. They're going to build 26 homes. They're going to demolish 26 homes, build some other Jewish institution in East Jerusalem. And just undercutting it seems to me it's almost undercutting the possibility that it might have been possible for a two-state. I mean, we could get to what maybe the solution might be in the end, but it seems to be that it's an arrogance of power.
It is the arrogance of power, as Senator Fulbright,
he talked about
William Fulbright
talked about us, you know, and that sort of thing.
He was talking about us, but this is a perfect example of the arrogance of power.
And I wonder if we come back to this idea of Realpolitik, because that comes out of German, really, and it could also be Haushofer.
Well, the roots of it,
who informed Mr. Hitler had Realpolitik. You know, and the idea is that you don't want to. No, okay, maybe I'm wrong. You can set me straight because you have, but it was Haushofer. He was a German political thing. And the thing is that Realpolitik is used. We don't want any woody-headed liberalism about let's be peaceful and good and everything. You got to be grounded in reality, and reality is what comes out of the end of a gun.
Well,
and whoever's got the power can do whatever they do with who they conquer because they've got the Gatling gun rather than just a musket. They can rape the women, they can murder the men, they can castrate, they can do whatever they want. They'd better be the winner, and that's real.
Well, you got to be the winner, but but let me put it to you this way: the roots of this come from Machiavelli. The roots of Realpolitik come from Machiavelli.
I had it associated with Haushofer.
No, it goes back. It goes all the way back. And the idea. I mean, on one level, you're quite right. The claims of Realpolitik are that you had to have, originally was that you had to have a strong army, that arms are more important than anything else.
That's why we put so much support into developing arms, so we can get an advantage over the other tribe and steal the other people's grain and do whatever we want with them as slaves.
The thing is, today, that assumption doesn't work anymore.
Well, did it ever, I guess.
And you can make an argument. But the key thing that Realpolitik involved, in my view, was the idea that you don't enter a political crisis from the standpoint of ideology. You try and determine what people want, objectively. You try and mitigate ideology as much as you can. In the actual negotiation. In other words, you're going to agree to disagree. And there are things that are not going to be put on the table. Is Islam better than Christianity? Is Christianity better than Islam? That's not an issue. What is an issue is, what would it take in terms of stuff on the ground?
Reality.
To bring about a Palestinian state. Now, there are three positions that are on the table right now.
Well, if I may, but when you have these things, it's not as though we always have equal input from people who are well-balanced. Usually, and often it was, that you have overwhelming power on one side, like, say, the Europeans coming up against the Indian nations of North America, and they don't have to make any concessions to the Indians of North America.
That's right.
They just steal, break every treaty, steal everything, and take everything, because they got the power and the ability to do that. And that's one grounding thing that people on the right will say is Realpolitik. We've got the guns, that's it, line up, be a slave.
The hassle, though, is there is the most intelligent strain of Realpolitik. Starting from Machiavelli, is that you want the guns, but you don't want to use them. The idea is to be as efficient as you can. In other words, you try and create a situation, if you have to use them, use them. Then you're right. But if you use them improperly, you're going to create enormous problems for yourself.
You might hold on. Rome held for 1,000 years, I guess.
Yeah.
But they did fall.
They did fall.
Yeah.
And they didn't always do it through Rome made concessions to its.
They did build roads and things, didn't they?
They did
and
a
they're
lot of
always
stuff.
saying, we're bringing law, we're bringing advanced civilization, we're bringing baths, we're bringing aqueducts.
Now, in some cases,
and that is the advance of
one of the
civilization,
reasons one of the reasons the Indians were killed in the way they were, one of the reasons Jews were killed, it was not realpolitik. This was ideological insanity.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
I mean, why would you kill? If you think of the final solution under Hitler, why would you set up Auschwitz? Why would you kill all these people? Use the trains, use the personnel, use the material, building crematoria. These are huge complexes, things like Auschwitz. When you're right at the point of the decisive moments of World War II.
Okay.
That's not realpolitik. That's insanity.
Yeah. That's right.
Or that's ideological.
It was not realpolitik in that they knew that the great engine of U.S. power and the other allies were going to do it, and they probably knew at the very beginning. I bet Roosevelt knew at the beginning and they were going to win.
Yeah,
they had to win because they had the arsenal of America and everything. They had to win, and you had a madman.
In fact, the most interesting argument, if you want to think about it in terms of the genocide, is not a realpolitik argument.
Yeah. It's insanity.
Yeah. You know you're going to lose, and that's why you have to do it.
Wow, that's a big jump, isn't it? You think he knew that right from the beginning, and it was just a death wish or something like that? Some insanity, which is very worrisome when you've got weapons that seem to be, maybe you'll know, species lethal now.
Now,
since about 1970.
Moving though now to the Middle East.
Okay.
You're quite right in bringing that up. If you don't have to make concessions and you're in power, one argument is to say, to hell with it, I'm not going to do anything.
Well, that seems to be the position of the Israelis now.
That is correct.
It's like the Indians on the frontier.
Now, on the other hand, here's the other part of it. On some level, it's up to from a realpolitik standpoint, it's up to the Palestinians to deal with that situation.
Well, the American Indians had to deal with it, and they still haven't gotten their just reward.
That is certainly true.
But the Palestinians, and that's history. I mean, that's the history of the world. The strong rule over the weak.
But the Palestinians are in a different situation than the American Indians.
Are they really?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. They haven't had a hell of a lot to say about anything. I don't think from the beginning. I bet they knew that the Israeli designers knew they were going to win in 1948. They had an advantage all along, militarily.
Probably.
They're trying to make it though. They're big with the underdog, and so forth.
But part of the reason they won was not the military advantage that Israel won in '48. It was also
Truman.
No, but it was also the disunity among among the Arabs.
Right. Okay.
I mean, they were completely at one another's throats. The different groups that were involved. Indeed, the PLO is formed in '68.
Right.
Yeah. And now we have a situation among Palestinians in which, number one, two groups are split off against one another. Hamas and Fatah. And I can imagine a civil war coming out of this down the road. I mean, there virtually was a civil war in Gaza. Palestinian groups were killing one another.
They were fighting like tigers, and when they do,
I mean, people
throwing each other off buildings.
I was going to say,
this internecine stuff gets really
that
bad.
Is exactly well.
It's like the what do you call it? The Jets and the Blues or whatever it is in West Side Story.
Yeah.
You know,
well, one of the things about
mafia guys or something.
One of the things about realpolitik or political realism is divide and conquer. You want to institute the idea of divide and conquer.
And I think the people who run the show do divide and conquer, not only physically but also intellectually.
But I think also it's up to the Palestinians and a number of other scholars, Rashid Khalidi, various other people have said this. It's up to them to make the political commitment to present a united front, to work as a coalition so that Israel at least is stuck with somebody to negotiate with. Under present circumstances, all they say is, well, who do we deal with?
Right. Also, you got a thing where the people who are overrun, I mean like Dacia or up in Dacia or something when the Rome was expanding, there would be people who would become in league with the leagues of soldiers that are enforcing the Roman law. they would become, it would be seen in a certain word as collaborators with that, and they would reap benefit for that, and they would become clients to that, and they would become like that. So there's a lot of things. After the Second World War, it's clear the United States was the emerging power, so people were trying to line up and become collaborators, or in sync with the way the world was seen from the United States of America. We were the Rome emerging, no? That right? So there were a lot of people trying to line up, and most of the countries of the world have lined up with a paradigm that we've set upon the world in terms of economics and the way the world's going to be set up. That is our view of the world, and so they would be seen like Marxists. Some Marxists would say they're like running dogs. Virtually every country in the world is going along with our idea, and our idea just fell apart in terms of the financial thing, and it's falling apart now. Maybe China's emerging, things are different. So you've got a real mix-up in terms of how the hell we're going to operate this interrelated system,
what's interesting
spaceship Earth.
Is the way the right...
It's up for grabs.
The way the right... Yes, it is up for grabs. The way the right has viewed this is that let's take our country back.
Yeah, well, that's your
attitude.
Tea Party and all that. And it's coming out in the local politics now, yeah.
And I think for people of a progressive slant, liberal, socialist slant, it's up to us to be clear about what kind of positive stuff we put on the table. Now, I don't particularly care, to be perfectly honest. My view in terms of foreign policy is a very simple view. Realistically speaking, I don't care about this organization or that organization. I am as cynical about Hamas as I am about Fatah, as I am about
Washington.
Washington, a little,
A
Israel.
little more, a little less.
A little less.
A little less
cynical.
A little more faith in the American model. It's diminishing. The faith in that model is diminishing here and around the world, is it not?
Yes.
Okay.
Edward Said once said,
scholar,
what we need is the great Palestinian spokesperson
and scholar.
He once said what the Palestinians need is a Mandela. We need a Palestinian Mandela, and that's right. He was dead on. And it seems to me that what we have to become clearer about is not what we want, but what's possible. But we have to imagine the possible. Today,
imagine
the possible. I called one of my books "Imagining the Possible."
Okay. Imagine there's no.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, right.
But I was going to say, with regard to the Middle East, now there are three things that are on the table. One is a binational state. One is a two-state solution, Israel, Palestine. One is a radical solution, which I don't think will work, which is basically the following: give the West Bank to Jordan, let Egypt take over Gaza, have the United States fund it, and then you get rid of the problem of the Palestinians. I don't think that'll work.
Why? Okay, let's just say that. I hadn't thought. Why wouldn't it work?
Because I think that the desire for a Palestinian homeland on the part of the Palestinian people is a realistic demand.
It's a national
reality.
Identity? It's a national is it a strong national identification?
Yes,
you think it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's number one.
The basis of the nation state is pretty new in terms of history. I mean,
Number two, Jordan, and now there is a majority of a good slice of the population of Jordan is Palestinian, but there have been tensions between the two groups.
There were indeed,
Number one. And with Egypt, this would be tough because the United States would have to give the funding to do this. You bring enormous amounts of people into the workforce. There are enormous technical problems.
Right.
But the big thing is I don't think the Palestinians would buy it, and I don't think they should buy it. So what is it
that would serve well the thinking of a lot of people. That would get rid of the problem, But
I think this
is... And they say, the Israelis will say, we're just little and you got the whole Arab nations, lots of room for them. They're all Arabs. The Palestinian identity is fake and all that.
This is now
we get
becoming
propaganda,
a myth. Israel as a colonial power has been in existence longer than Israel as a non-colonial power. Think of Israel comes into existence in 1948.
Yeah.
It's a tiny little thing.
Mm-hmm.
In 1967, it takes over.
Well, it won
the
a
West
war.
Bank.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
won a
won
war.
the Great
That's
War.
the way nations build themselves,
Yeah.
don't they? They win.
Now, its size is quadrupled. I mean, it's not only simply this little thing. It's the seventh strongest military power. As you say, it possesses hundreds of atomic bombs.
Yeah. And a strong sense of identity based on suffering, going back to Masada and all of that, and a strong narrative that is strongly held by people who have suffered greatly.
Yeah, and it's time really to think about this in terms of reality, realpolitik, rather than the myth.
One of the elements
today
of
today. Yeah. Since 1967, today we're living in 2010.
Of the Christian era.
So, all right, so we have roughly 45 years, or 43 years, of Israel as a colonial power taking over this area. Whereas Israel without that territory existed for 1948 to 1967.
And it existed in
15 years.
It existed at the end of the Seder for 1,000 years.
No, forget
that. But I'm just saying.
48
That's
to 67.
That's part of their national story. Yeah.
48 to 67, it's a tiny little thing. 67 to today, it's a much bigger thing.
And there was a great surge of patriotism, and we've won sort of like we won the World Cup when '67 happened, was it not?
But the World
Cup through the Jewish community of the world.
But let's put it this way: this is no longer
we're the winner.
But this team is starting to panic a bit.
I think they're
circling
in deep trouble.
The wagons.
Yeah, I think so too. That's what makes me more nervous than anything else, even more than Kashmir, I think.
I think you're right. I think, well, Kashmir is
That's another
dangerous.
One. Because the enemy de jure, remember, you're too young again. I didn't realize you were such a youngster and everything like that. I
love that
But
kind
it used
of
to be, it used to be the commies. Remember, with Jordan McCarthy and the COINTELPRO, and it was the commies that were against us. We are legitimate historically. That's the assumption by all the great powers. Rome wanted to think that. The kings of England wanted to think that. We are legitimate. The things outside of that are not legitimate. They're terrorists or something. They want to think that way. And now we've gotten down to where our system is not adequate to what the future requires in a very large intellectual sense in terms of a major moment in the evolution of events, even on into latency like consciousness or the evolution. And we have species-lethal weapons now. Do you think that's true? One said that. And when did they become so? They weren't in the Second World War.
Right.
We were protected in our gestating impotence in terms of the ability to kill each other. We've now crossed a major existential line in the universe. Do our leaders cotton on to that fact adequately, much less the liberating potentiality that might be inherent in the way the universe is set up? That we're at a time of qualitative transformation.
In this regard, I think President Obama has made strides. I think his agreement with the Soviet Union to lower the level of lower the number of nuclear weapons. That's a very important move.
Do you think he got it to where they're not in now? If there was an unleashing,
it's not zero.
If I remember, let me just pursue this for a second, if you don't mind, Stephen. I believe you will be more a student of it than I am, but I think at the turn of the 19th, 20th century, the ratio of deaths between the boys in the meadow fighting, lining up, and killing each other, I think it was 10 to 1. For every 10 soldiers killed, 1 civilian was killed. I think by the end of the 20th century, we take review, it's exactly changed. 10, firebombing. Yeah. Firebombing, massive terrorist attacks, but napalming little children in Vietnam because we had some idea about a creeping thing. So that the way of the weaponry, which has been used, and we've had advances in that, have gotten to a certain point at some time within our lifetime that is existentially new, that if they were unleashed, it would mean, modeled, the end of our species. Is that true or not?
Possible.
And if it is true, is there not the possibility of some qualitative transformation on what would be called the living side of our ability technologically to provide for everybody that signals a new opening that is on the side of that is existentially significant as that destructive capability that is there in all the modeling we can be presented. And the old way of doing things with the realpolitik in the sense of just power is all that matters. What comes out of the end of a gun or a bomb.
But it's not...
Do you understand? There's
yeah, it's
something new blowing in the wind.
Realpolitik is simply a set of techniques.
Okay.
It's a set of techniques to maximize power. Now, if it can be maximized through a gun, some of the realpolitik would say fine. If it's not maximized through a gun, that's also fine.
It's called soft power. Or
yeah,
PR.
Well, no, they would say you'd gain in, you'd set up different ideas of the balance of power, you'd engage in different treaties, you'd break treaties, you'd make new treaties, anything to maximize your position at the moment. Okay. That's the idea.
As a nation state, still sovereignty
as
at
a
the nation state level.
Right.
Right.
And what counts is the nation state, and what counts is what the government defines as the national interest. What I said before about Vietnam, that's what's important here. That, if you like, there has been a democratic checking of this centralization of power. I think that's true. I think that's why people were so scared with regard to Iraq. Why government officials were so concerned about those demonstrations on Iraq.
It was huge.
And they were huge. It didn't work, but it was.
Work, yeah.
But you can't judge that way. On some level, you have to see, over the long term, speaking realistically, what we have, I think, is a growing, shall we say, consensus among a large part of the American public that you don't want to go into these kind of public.
We just sent 30 more thousand, Mr. McChrystal, into Afghanistan, which is another thing where we've gone, because the thing has shifted. It used to be commies, now it's the Arabs and the Islam.
Could you imagine, prior to Vietnam, a situation where you say, I'm going to send in 30,000 troops, but I want to get them out in a year?
You're right.
You wouldn't have gotten that.
We're going to win unconditional surrender is what we were
That's
after.
right.
Yeah, and we got it because we had overwhelming power.
And that deadline that President Obama set was precisely in response to this sensibility.
You think you're going to keep it?
I don't know.
You think those troops are going to leave Iraq?
I don't know.
And what is there a connection
I don't think
at all?
so.
Let me ask you something that's loaded and everything. Likud is part of the neocon. The Likud element within Israel is a strong part of what is called the neocon.
They're connected to, yes.
They're connected at the hip. So they have a great deal to say with what's going on in the Middle East. Was there any informing of our foreign policy vis-a-vis Iraq because of Likud influence or Israeli or AIPAC influence on trying to be an outpost on the frontier with the Indian nations? We're going to whip them into shape, or was it just strictly oil, or what? What was the influence of Israel on our idea to go into Iraq or even into Afghanistan?
To be perfectly honest, I think that progressives on this have gotten completely out of control with Israel. The United States is bigger than Israel.
Let's hope so, don't you?
I don't hope so. This I can say I know so. The cash is going. You want to speak realistically? The cash goes from the United States to Israel, not from Israel to the United States.
In Niagara proportion.
Wait. In massive proportion.
Did they get the okay to bomb that reactor in Iraq when they just flew off and bombed that reactor, and then they did a thing in Syria? And they're talking about Iran, and they're going to do it if they want to do it, whether the United States wants to us or not.
Put it to you this way.
Aren't they beginning to talk like that?
Put it to you this way.
It's existential. Enemies at the gate, all that kind of stuff. And they got 400 atomic bombs.
Hang on.
Okay, very dangerous.
Very dangerous. Basically, Israel has to get the okay from the United States to do something.
Did they get the okay to bomb the thing in Iraq?
I'm sure they did.
You don't think there's a chance they're going to go off the frontier, off the plantation?
No, I don't.
They're in our thrall. They won't do anything without us.
Without passing it by us.
Passing it by us, and we don't like it. They seem to say, "To hell with you."
No,
what did he do when Biden went over there?
Hang on.
They don't seem to give.
Hang on. They give. They take back. This was an if I can put it this way, this was one of those scandals that makes the newspapers, but that doesn't fundamentally affect the policy.
Okay.
The hassle here is not the neocons, in my view anyway. It's people like it's the liberals.
Oh, even the liberals, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the primary person.
That's the same here.
The primary person. For example, Senator Schumer of New York has basically said that he will not. Instead of an investigation of Israel for its actions against the flotilla, what he wants is an investigation of the flotilla for being the Turkish groups that have funded the flotilla for being connected with Al Qaeda.
I think Israel burned a bridge with Turkey
but wait.
in that.
Well,
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
The war is burning a bridge. That happens rarely.
No, I mean That was one of their. Maybe I've been reading too many newspapers.
They can rebuild the
You don't think there's a big thing building up among the, not say Arab, but the Islamic people of the world?
No.
Against the, no, if I may.
Yeah.
There is something growing up with Hamas, if I'm not mistaken, who do not want to accept, in a certain historical sense, the legitimacy from the get-go of the State of Israel.
But that's always been the position.
No, yeah, okay, but that's their position. They do not accept it. They don't accept it from the get-go.
However,
now, are there forces in the world that, let me just finish the thought. Are there forces in the world growing up, maybe from scholarly places within Islam, that's 1.3, that's a quarter of the world population, who else can challenge at a fundamental level economic theory, the structure of the international financial system, technological thing in that, who else can challenge the supposed legitimacy of the pattern that was put upon the earth and assumed legitimate by the United States of America and all their Western allies at a level of legitimate. They do not have a system that's worthy of going along with.
We got to step back.
Okay.
You said
revolutions in the air. Maybe.
You said that Hamas doesn't recognize Israel. That's
they don't
true.
recognize it. They don't want to recognize it as legitimate.
Right. Hang on. At the same time, it's willing to offer. See, the problem with Hamas is not that it's dogmatism; it's its vacillation that's the problem.
Okay.
Hamas has said openly it will accept a ceasefire for 50 years with Israel.
And they go along with the
50 years is a long time.
I guess they would go along with the Abdullah plan.
Wait. Yes, that is the best plan. But they're not going to do that. And the reason, and I've actually just written on this.
Okay.
Actually in Una Città, in an Italian journal.
Okay. You write in Italian?
No, it was translated.
Oh,
but I have a column in.
I wouldn't be surprised.
This
you
wonderful
spoke about
journal.
50 languages. You're so prolific.
No. But the point being, it claims not to be anti-Semitic to the West.
Wait a minute.
Hamas.
It seems not to be anti-Semitic.
It claims not to be anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitic to the West?
It claims when it's talking to
Israel,
the West.
you mean? To Israel.
Yeah. But at the same time, its charter refers to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, the most famous anti-Semitic text ever. It claims that it's concerned with Palestinian unity. But at the same time, it has refused the coalition with Fatah.
Well, they're fighting. Yeah,
yes, and that has to be overcome if you're going to actually deal with Israel.
And Fatah, from that perspective, would
wait a minute, you're going too fast.
Willing to collaborate with the enemy. That's the way.
Hamas got plenty of support from Israel originally against Fatah.
Yeah, because they had such a brief against Fatah.
Yeah, the issue here is the following, and this is what I think has to be made clearer. The issue with Hamas is not simply that it's a group of dogmatic fanatics. It's an organization that's concerned with its own interests.
All right, and it's also supporting, giving some support to the people. Like the Panthers did.
Like the Panthers did, but and this is obviously a good thing. But the reality of the situation is that most of the support that's coming in, that is coming to the Palestinians, is not coming from Hamas. It's coming from the European Union, and previously from the UN, from UNRWA.
Okay.
By the way, the UN has now taken over sending the supplies, the 10,000 tons from the flotilla, to Gaza. No, 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 no. This has to be understood, and this is one of the problems of the Middle East, that everybody sees this as special. It's not special. They're organizational interests that are articulated. Hamas, every person, second person you talk to, this is a group of fanatics. They're not fanatics. What they are is organizationally bound to the interests
of the people of Gaza.
Of Hamas, not the people of Gaza.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
And in my view,
are they democratically selected? And would a democratic thing? No, no.
I mean, that's a real push.
Okay.
Yeah.
They did win an election, did they not?
Yeah, I thought you meant internal to the organization. It has a
okay.
military wing.
Yeah, okay.
And it has an organizational political wing.
Okay.
But that's normal.
Yeah.
The point is that it has to be treated as an organization, as a fundamental player, as a crucial player in the area. Open relations have to be extended to Hamas, I think, by the United States, by the West.
How can we do that over the propaganda calling them terrorists? They're on a terrorist
That's why we
list.
have to.
And
that has to be combated.
And we got the whole left wing, the whole right wing thing about them, and that seems to be sacrosanct. And more of our money goes to endless supplies of M40, M16. I mean, planes, attacky helicopters. It can just go endlessly into there. They got endless support to be able to gun. It was sort of like Charlie Wilson's War. In the view of some, you can come with attack helicopters and have complete control and do everything.
You know what?
And they don't have any weapons. And they don't want to make sure there are no weapons. There are no weapons that are in among the things that come into the Gaza because they're terrorists.
Let me make a heretical suggestion.
Do.
To you. You remember the Annapolis conference that President Bush put together?
Vaguely, yeah. Vaguely, yeah. Sharm el-Sheikh was another, I think. Yeah.
He invited Israel. He paid a fortune to get Israel there, paid a fortune to get...
politically or economically?
Economically.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Paid a fortune to get Egypt there. I'm sorry, Saudi Arabia there. Brought President Abbas there.
It was after Madrid? Or?
2007.
Okay, okay.
All right. Yeah. Now, what's interesting, this was supposed to be President Bush's great move for peace in the area. He didn't invite Hamas. This is just ideological, and it's self-defeating. Either that Annapolis conference was not meant to succeed from the get-go, or if it was meant to succeed, giving now Bush a break, cutting him some slack, then it was conducted with such stupidity. How can you get a peace program going for the Middle East without including Hamas? If they control Gaza.
I can remember there were some people who were able to cotton on to Martin King, but they couldn't Malcolm. And Malcolm's emerged as a great hero over the long haul.
But you didn't have to make peace with here. It wasn't one state dealing with another state.
Well, there's always been somebody who's willing to go along with the power of the be, where you can do it. They would call them collaborators. They called them collaborators in France, who would collaborate with the occupying powerful force.
These things are...
And so the thing is that idea that instead of just collaborating with the powers of... And the thing is, it's not just Israel. Israel is tied to us at the waist. We are connected to Israel just irrevocably and so forth. So that the questioning of the legitimacy of the order of the world is what I'm saying, is going to be called into question. And I think it's going to come on the heels of the fact we do not have an adequate economic system for the organization of the world. We just had a meltdown of our economy. You've got a jobless recovery coming. The premises that have been imposed upon the world in the name of the movement of history, legitimacy of history that we've imposed. We've had people who've lined up on our court collaborating with us from the standpoint of something new needed. Something new is needed in order to evolve, in order to avoid the unleashing of the ungodly weapons that now exist without vision in the world of a liberating order that is called for by the evolution of events, and we don't have it coming from our intellectual leadership or our political leadership.
I think that's probably true. But
that's kind of serious.
Oh,
and
it
why
is
don't we
serious.
hear some vision sometimes from people who've got some sort of a take on things other than the same old tried and true things coming out of history?
That's what you're here for.
Well,
in the mainstream media, you're not going to get that.
No, I know that.
And but I do have to say this with regard to Israel and Palestine.
We only got about 4 minutes left.
Everybody knows what the solution is.
Okay, what is the solution?
The solution is a two-state solution. It's the Abdullah Plan. Two-state solution.
That's been on the table for 3 or 4 years.
Exactly. Everybody knows what it is. It's a question of having the political will. And this is on both sides, but especially Israel, because it's the more powerful entity. Having the political will to carry that through. A government like that of Netanyahu, which is indebted to Israel's religious fanatics, the Shas party, that has a foreign minister who's a flat-out racist.
Who is that? What is it?
Avigdor Lieberman.
Yeah, he's
flat-out
like a brute.
Racist.
Yeah.
A brute.
Yeah.
Is not going to be able to. I think is going to have a great deal of trouble doing this. And here, this is a matter of will. I mean, Rabin was willing to make former President Rabin, assassinated, by the way, by religious Jews.
Right.
Not by Arabs, by religious Jews.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
The same people who are preventing peace peace policies from being developed, even small steps in that direction by Netanyahu, were precisely the people who killed President Rabin. And that sounds like a strong charge, but I mean it. I'm willing to stand with that. This religious community within Israel, it's a scandal. The groups around Maya Sharim that are based in the Shas party, they don't work, they don't join the army, they pray. And I said to one of them, I'd like to do that too. I'd like to be paid not to work, to get benefits on housing, insurance, everything imaginable. And nobody does any work. Nobody joins the army, and they're the ones who want the imperialist policy. It's absolutely unbelievable.
And they have the balance of power or something like that?
In this government, they do.
We're having trouble in our own country, don't you think?
With regard to...
Do you think they just changed control with Mr. McChrystal? They got Mr. Petraeus. They got it up. I think that's a horrible thing. We're bogged down in there. I don't think where's the vision for a qualitative transformation?
And I don't know if there is a possibility of a qualitative transformation. I know this much, that if the United States doesn't get out of Afghanistan, it's going to be bogged in...
And Iraq.
Yes, and Iraq, but now, of course, the thing has shifted to Afghanistan.
Yeah, and Pakistan.
If the United States doesn't get out of Afghanistan, we are going to wind up. The United States is going to wind up in the same position as the Russians did, as the English did, as the old conquerors did. Those who attempted to conquer. This is a quagmire in which there is no state of Afghanistan. There are warlords. Police is corrupted by guns and bribery.
You just say we better run the credits and everything because they're coming into time. Yeah, I know, you're right.
But you're quite right. A new vision for foreign policy, a democratic vision that recognizes America as one state amongst others, and not simply the absolute imperium. Or the head of the absolute imperium. That's
well said, Stephen Eric Bronner.
Thank you very much.
Always, your pleasure to have his
My
perceptions.
pleasure.
It's your pleasure. Tune in. We'll be coming back again. It's always good to talk with Stephen Eric Bronner, distinguished professor at the Rutgers University and chair of the U.S. Academics for Peace. And thanks for all the good work. It's really good to always see you discussing things. And I guess we haven't got it all solved.
I don't think so, but we can maybe make a step in the right direction.
We can try,
and that's what you're doing. Thank you so much.
So good to see you. Good to see you. And thank you for coming back again tomorrow. So, the Afghanistan, they just got Mr. Petraeus up there. I don't know. They bought everybody off in Iraq. It seems to me they were giving all sorts of money and we're going broke. I think there's problems with the basic premises for this country. I really do.
I think you're right.
There's something going on and we've not caught up with it. They're still talking about getting over the Vietnam syndrome. We lost.
We lost.
Yeah.
And I mean, deal with it.
I know. Deal with it.
Yeah. It's like grow up.
Yes. Okay. I guess we better. We're over, so we might as well get off.
Thank you so much.
Don't let me forget to give you that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You know, I think you're right. I think I should do something.